When we speak of these things not as natural resources or commodities, but as gifts, the whole relationship to the natural world changes. To name a gift, to name the world as gift, rather than commodity, makes you feel your membership in this web of reciprocity. It makes you happy and it makes you accountable.
In our hectic media landscape, the tale of Robin Wall Kimmerer and her beloved book, Braiding Sweetgrass, is a tale of humanity over the algorithm. First published in 2013, Braiding Sweetgrass joined the bestseller list 7 years later in 2020, having risen into its readers' hands person by person, gift by gift, whisper by whisper. The book's subtitle, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants, struck a chord with our society in 2020 as we re-examined how we wanted to relate to the world and began to seek knowledge the way that roots break through concrete. Kimmerer joined Sal in 2024 to celebrate the publication of The Serviceberry, Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World, and to share the mindset of what she calls gift thinking. To name the world as gift, she writes in the book, is to feel your membership in the web of reciprocity. It makes you happy and it makes you accountable, end quote. A gift creates not only gratefulness, but the desire and the need to continue the giving. I'm Rebecca Hoogs, the Executive Director of Seattle Arts and Lectures. You're listening to Sal on Air, a collection of talks from the world's best writers from 38 years of Seattle Arts and Lectures. A 2022 MacArthur Genius Grant recipient, Kimmerer has forever changed the face of ecological writing. A PhD in botany, a mother, a professor, Kimmerer's skill as a writer and scientist have beckoned millions to listen more deeply to the oldest teachers we have, the plants around us. Following the reading, Kimmerer is joined by Colleen Echohawk, changemaker and storyteller and curator of Sal's 2025 Community Curated Series. Their discussion highlights Indigenous scientists, how wildlife thrives in a city, and how plants hold our history. This is Sal on Air.
Thank you, Miigwech, for that warm welcome and for the beautiful words of introduction and community solidarity. I'm really honored to be here with you. And I want to begin in our traditional protocol greeting and say, Ani, bojo indinoe maganodok, shabadas kegish kokwe nadeshnakas, bodwe wadmi kweyanda, megazedo dem minwa mako do dem, miigwech kinekego gamijong. And in our beautiful Potawatomi language, our motherland, as we just heard, is, I give you greetings, my relatives, respectful greetings, and tell you that my name is Light Shining Through Sky Woman. I'm a member of the Bear Clan and the Eagles of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. It is also part of our traditional protocol that we always begin with gratitude, because we are showered daily with the gifts of the earth. When we first put our feet on Shkakmikwe this morning, we had that sweet morning air to breathe. We had food to eat, a drink of cool water, the companionship of clouds and fir trees, gratitude for each other, for the privilege of our shared purpose, and for the original peoples in whose homelands we meet today, to whom we owe an unpaid debt of land, of history, of knowledge of how we care for the land. And yet let us use this gratitude to offer our intention that just as we give thanks for the gift of the earth, will we live in such a way that the earth and the people will be grateful to us. I also want to say thank you for that really nice introduction, but I need to amend it because I am not who you think I am. I am so much more. Because standing before you here is also 1 billion microbial cells who are running my gut and therefore my brain. There are about 3,000 invertebrates on my surface, innumerable fungi, to say nothing of the fact that every one of my cells has been colonized by a symbiotic prokaryote who took up residence as a mitochondrion millions of years ago and has been with us ever since. My bones are not me, but the minerals from the soil and from groundwater. My muscles are full of carbon on short-term loan from corn. And the breath that oxygenates my blood is the exhalation of trees. I had a cup of white pine tea this morning, and that white pine tea doesn't stand alone. They are inseparable from their mycorrhizal network, the nitrifying bacteria who nestle in the needles of that pine, the bark beetles, the nuthatch, the pine drops blooming by the roots. That pine tree is no more an individual than I am. We are all part of the great green we. So thank you for that introduction. But I cannot claim sole credit. And I tell you this evening in particular, because a very important assumption of capitalist economic theory is that every individual will act to advance their own self-interest. So as we explore the grip of economics, it matters how we think about self-interest. Where exactly do we draw the boundary between the self and the natural world? If you are here to listen to a nature writer tonight, where's the boundary between nature and the nature writer? And in the Western worldview, they are separate. Humans are apart from nature, and we often think of ourselves as perched atop this fictional pyramid of human exceptionalism, different from and separate from, superior to the 200 million other species with whom we share the planet. Those species who are often reduced to objects, to our property. But in the kin-centric, indigenous worldview, that boundary is blurred because all species are understood as intrinsically valuable, as distinct beings worthy of respect. None is above the other. We are all connected. We are all relatives. We'll be coming back to that. And if this kinship worldview seems too abstract to you, perhaps we could all in this room do a little experiment together. Breathe. Just breathe and know that the air inflating your lungs at this moment is rich in oxygen, enabling your mitochondria, and it was all given to you by the plants. In this moment, they are keeping you alive. So who's at the top of the pyramid now? And then breathe out. And if you could, in your mind's eye, just watch that carbon dioxide leave your body, it would stream out the window into the stomates of the Doug fir outside, where it is taken up by the chloroplasts to keep them alive. Your breath is their life. Their breath is your life. We need never feel alone again. Where are the boundaries of the self now? Well, let's follow that breath right now. You want to go on a field trip with me? Let's follow that breath into the leaf of a serviceberry tree. Let me read a little. The cool breath of evening slips off the wooded hills, displacing the heat of the day, and with it come the birds, as eager for the cool as I am. They arrive in a flock of calls that sound like laughter, And I have to laugh back with the same delight. They're all around me, cedar waxwings and catbirds, and a flash of bluebird iridescence. I have never felt such kinship to my namesake robins as in this moment when we are both stuffing our mouths with berries and chortling with happiness. The bushes are laden with fat clusters of red, blue, and wine purple in every stage of ripeness. So many you can pick them by the handful. I'm glad I have a pail, and it's getting pretty heavy. The birds carry their berries in the bucket of their bellies, and I wonder if they'll be able to fly with so much cargo. This abundance of berries feels like a pure gift from the land. I have not earned, paid for, nor labored for them. There is no mathematics of worthiness that reckons I deserve them in any way. And yet here they are, along with the sun and the air and the birds and the rain, gathering in clouds, towers of cloudy cumulonimbi in a distant storm. You could call these berries natural resources, but the robins and I know them as gifts, and we both sing gratitude with our mouths full. Saskatoon, Juneberry, Shadbush, Shadblow, Sugarplum, Sarvis, Serviceberry, these are among the many names for Amelanchier. Ethnobotanists know that the more names a plant has, the greater its cultural importance. And this tree is beloved for its fruits, for its medicines, and for the early froth of flowers that whiten the edges of the woods in the first hint of spring. Serviceberry is known as a calendar plant because of its faithfulness to seasonal weather patterns. Its bloom is a sign that the ground has thawed at last and that the shad are running upstream, or at least it was, back in the day when rivers were clear and free enough to support the spawning of shad. Calendar plants like serviceberry are important for synchronizing the seasonal rounds of traditional Indigenous people who move in an annual cycle through our homelands to where the foods are ready. Instead of changing the land to suit our convenience, we changed ourselves. Eating with the seasons is a way of honoring abundance by going to meet the food when and where it arrives. A world of produce warehouses and grocery stores enables the practice of having what you want when you want it. We force the food to come to us at considerable financial and ecological cost, rather than following the practice of taking what has been given to us. These serviceberries are not coerced, and their carbon footprint is 0. Maybe that's why they taste so good. They only come this time of year, these ephemeral sips of summer, without any aftertaste of harm. In Potawatomi, they are called bozakman, which is a superlative. It means the best of the berries. And as I have one in my mouth, I agree with my ancestors on the rightness of that name. Imagine a fruit that tastes like a blueberry, but crossed with the heft of an apple, a touch of rosewater, and a minuscule crunch of seeds that taste like almonds. They taste like nothing a grocery store has to offer. Wild, complex, with a flavor that your body recognizes as the real food it's been waiting for. I can almost feel those mitochondria doing a happy dance. For me, the most important part of the word bozakman is the min, the root word for berry. That word is a revelation because it's also the root word for gift. In naming the plants who shower us with goodness, we recognize that these are gifts from our plant relatives. I can't help but gaze at them, these shiny gems cupped in my hand, and breathe out gratitude. In the presence of such gifts, gratitude is the intuitive first response, isn't it? The gratitude flows toward our plant elders and radiates to the rain, to the sunshine, to the improbability of bushes spangled with morsels of sweetness. in a world that can be bitter. And in the Anishinaabe worldview, it's not just fruits that are understood as gifts, rather all of the sustenance that the land provides, from fish to firewood, everything that makes our lives possible. Splints for baskets, roots for medicine, the trees whose bodies make our homes, and the pages of our books. This is always true, whether it's harvested directly from the forest or mediated by commerce and harvested from the shelves of a store. It all comes from the gifts of the earth. When we speak of these things not as natural resources or commodities, but as gifts, the whole relationship to the natural world changes. To name a gift, to name the world as gift, rather than commodity, makes you feel your membership in this web of reciprocity. As you just heard, it makes you happy and it makes you accountable. Conceiving of something as a gift changes your relationship in a really profound way, even though the physical makeup of the thing has not changed a bit. I like to think about this in terms of, in this season of giving, maybe you're going to unwrap a woolly knit hat on Christmas morning. And that knit hat that you purchased at the store is going to keep you warm regardless of its origin. But if that hat was hand knit by your beloved grandma, then you are in a really different relationship to that thing. You now are responsible for it, and your gratitude has motive force in the world. You are far more likely to take better care of a gift hat than a commodity hat, aren't you? This is the power of gift thinking. I imagine if we acknowledge that everything that we consume is a gift from Mother Earth, we would take far better care of what we have been given. A few years ago, I was giving a lecture at a college of natural resources at a big, prestigious university. And I took the opportunity to interrogate that name because, after all, natural resources means raw materials that we will convert into something that we value. And as it happens, that college was in the process of changing its name, given its implications. So I offered a suggestion. Why don't you change your name to the Department of Earthly Gifts? They did the same thing. You should have seen this wave of beatific smiles go across the room. And everybody in that room said, "Oh, I want to work for the Department of Earthly Gifts." But of course, they chose something else. "It's a beautiful idea," a colleague told me later, "but it would kind of put the kibosh on grinding up trees." How we think ripples out to how we behave. If we view these berries as an object, as property, it can be exploited as a commodity in a market economy. And when something moves from the status of gift to the status of commodity, we become disconnected, detached from any kind of moral responsibility, and we are living the consequences of that language. Why have we permitted the dominance of an economic system that commoditizes everything, that creates scarcity instead of abundance, that promotes accumulation rather than sharing? We have surrendered, it seems, our values to an economic system that actively harms what we love. It pains me deeply, as I bet it does you, to know that an old-growth forest is worth more as lumber than as the lungs of the earth. And yet, I am harnessed to this economy in ways large and small. I am yoked to this extraction, and I'm wondering how we fix that, and I'm not alone. This system of economics that we're given as a default is hardly the only model out there. Anthropologists have observed and shared multiple cultural economies colored by very different worldviews around how we provide for ourselves, or economics. Among them are gift economies, which mirror the reciprocal exchanges of nature. And as these berries plunked into my ever heavier bucket, I was thinking about what I would do with them all. What do we do with surplus? I'll drop some off for friends and neighbors, and I'll fill the freezer so I can have Juneberry muffins in February. And this problem of deciding what to do with abundance reminds me of a report from a linguist, Daniel Everett. And he wrote about this as he was learning from a hunter-gatherer community in the Brazilian rainforest. And in his report, he says that a hunter had brought home a sizable kill, far too much to be eaten by his family. And the researcher asked how would he store the excess. Smoking and drying technologies were well known, storing was possible, but the hunter was puzzled by this question. Store the meat? Why would he do that? Instead, he sent out an invitation to a feast, and soon the neighboring families were gathered around his fire until every last morsel was consumed. This seemed like maladaptive behavior to the anthropologist, who asked again, given the uncertainty of meat in the forest, why didn't the hunter store the meat for himself, which is what the economic system of his home culture would have predicted? Store my meat? I store my meat in the belly of my brother, replied the hunter. I feel a great debt to that unnamed teacher for these words. There beats the heart of gift economies, an antecedent to market economies. In a gift economy, wealth is understood as having enough to share, and the practice for dealing with abundance is to give it away. In fact, status is determined not by how much one owns, but by how much one gives. The currency in a gift economy is relationship, expressed as gratitude, as interdependence, and ongoing reciprocity. A gift economy nurtures community bonds where the economic unit is not I, but we. So the hunter who shared the feast with you today could well anticipate that you would share from a full fish net tomorrow, or offer your labor when it comes time to fix the boat. The prosperity of the community grows from the flow of relationships, not from the accumulation of goods. And when the natural world is understood as a gift instead of private property, ethics seem to limit accumulation, because gifts aren't meant to be hoarded, are they? And they're not meant to be made scarce for others, but given away. Gift economies, as you know, are common in traditional societies. Gatherings of our Potawatomi people often feature a giveaway, a ceremony of gift giving to cement relationships through our nations. And in the Western world, somebody who's celebrating a life event, like a birthday or a graduation, might well expect to be given gifts. But in Potawatomi ways, it's the other way around. You celebrate your good fortune by giving away. And you know, here in the Pacific Northwest, gift economies of potlatches, in which gifts circulate, solidifying bonds and redistributing wealth throughout the community. And traditional potlatches are celebrations to give away possessions with lavish generosity. The ceremonial feasts display the wealth of the givers and affirm the web of relations. And the gifts received are likely to be given away at the next ceremony, keeping wealth in motion. Did you know that potlatches were banned by colonial governments under the influence of missionaries in the 1800s, because potlatches were seen as, in a quote from the missionary documents, contrary to the civilized values of accumulation? These two economic worldviews of prosperity gained through accumulation and prosperity gained through the sharing of the commons underpin the history of colonization in this country. The whole enterprise of dispossession of Native peoples was designed to eradicate the notion of land as a source of belonging and replace it with the idea that land is only a source of belongings. This required a narrowing of a definition of the self from commonwealth to individual wealth. And you don't have to participate in a potlatch or our tribal giveaways in order to see gift economies all around you. Let me give you a little example from my home. When August rolls around, my neighbor Sandy down the road in an old farmhouse, she puts out a card table under her front maples. And the canning jars with stalks full of bright gladiolas catch my eye. There's also a stack of zucchini, a basket of, a basket of new red potatoes, and a sign that says free. A person can only use so many glads, and so she shares the gladness of gladiolas with whoever might stop. Zucchinis are another story. Around here, when late summer heat might bring a new squash every single day, finding homes for surplus zooks is no joke. They grow from cucumber size to a baseball bat in a matter of days, and people have been known to put them in each other's mailboxes. Or my favorite, surreptitiously place them in the front seat of a parked car. I am not sure that this could be framed as a gift. It's more like a stealthy game of self-preservation. But not everybody has a garden or a pestilence of squash. So Sandy gets the pleasure of seeing a car stop on the way home from work to accept the gift of fresh veggies and a bouquet for the table. The currency of exchange is secret smiles on both faces. The zucchini and flowers model goes beyond the individual sharing to organizations. My daughter leads an agricultural extension program for her county, and the Master Gardeners members produce lots of surplus from their demonstration plots. Outside their office is a cute little setup where veggies and flowers are distributed to the community for free. All summer long, its bins are full of color and fresh food. But after the last frost, when the potatoes are all dug and the acorn squashes are gone, and even the hardiest kale has been exhausted, the shelves are bare beneath the sign. And it had all been given away, and the next day the staff was going to store the stand in the barn for the winter. So they were very surprised to get to work the next morning and find it gone. Somebody had taken the entire stand. With characteristic generosity, the staff chalked this up to ambiguous syntax rather than outright theft, because after all, the sign said, "Free farm stand." But isn't this the inherent problem with gift economies? They can't function well when there are cheaters who violate the trust. This sweet little gift economy was derailed by too much taking, by breaking the rules of sharing. Now, so here's the moment where I admit to you that I share the common characterization of economics as the dismal science. In fact, I have to tell you that my grandson and I, he is 10, we share a secret code word. When one of us realizes that the most boring possible thing is happening around us, we might silently mouth to one another, "Economic system." And then we start laughing at our misfortune for being in this boring moment. I don't know where it came from. Because after all, I am a botanist. I am a practitioner of what I think of as the joyful science, the jaw-dropping wonder at the creativity of the green world, that kind of science. So I can scarcely acknowledge without both chagrin and laughing that I just said to you, economic system, and that I'm writing about it. The origin story for the serviceberry is that I received a request from Emergence magazine, a wonderful publication that I hope you know that delves into issues at the intersection of culture, science, spirituality, and nature. I'd written for them before, and I was excited to do so again, but they asked me to write about the economic system. And so I considered it, but I had to regretfully decline because I don't know anything about economics. I realized that my understanding of the human economy, in which I was embedded every single day, I don't really understand it. I'd not paid much attention. I'd just been swept up in it without my consent or choice. And what little I do know about human economic systems is that the rapacious form of capitalism actively harms the living fabric of the planet and threatens our survival. And other than those negative, alienated feelings, I never thought too much about it. Well, that's why we asked you, they said, for a fresh perspective. And I remembered that the words ecology and economy come from the same Greek root of oikos, meaning home. Ecology is the study of the home. Economy refers to the management of the household. So as a botanist, a plant ecologist, I'm deeply acquainted with what we might call the economy of nature. And by this, I mean the ways that the ecological community, the needs of the ecological community are met, how all species intersect and interchange so that everybody can prosper. Or not. Evolution by natural selection weeds out the arrangements that do not create thriving. There are ecological principles which organize this thriving, natural laws, if you will. As if soil, water, trees, bugs, and birds all held a big economic summit, the G7 of the natural world, and agreed on a policy that promoted sustainability. Does a serviceberry have an economy? If an economy is a system that generates and distributes goods and services, then absolutely. That's one of the reasons I chose to invite serviceberry into this conversation. So in this little book that you now have in your hands, what I'm trying to do is think on the page, to ask why we've constructed an economy that degrades the land, and to ask what could we learn from the economy of nature that could guide us back to an economy that's aligned with natural law instead of against it. What do the trees, the bugs, the birds, and the land at the G7 have to say about this if we were humble enough to listen? And forward-thinking scientists have developed a so-called new area of study based on harnessing the intelligence and models of nature for problem solving. And this new discipline, as perhaps you know, is called biomimicry, the notion that we could learn from nature, from evolved solutions, and then adopt those solutions for our own questions. But predictably, the science of biomimicry has so far restricted learning to what new products and commodities might be made. What interests me is what might they teach us about how we could live? And in many indigenous traditions, so-called new science of biomimicry is the central notion of our ancient science, that where plants are understood not only as persons, but our oldest teachers. They've been on the earth far longer than we and embody the virtues that we honor of creativity and generosity. Who better to look to for guidance than those who can take light and air and water and turn it into food and then give it away for free? We might do well to listen to them. So let's ask the Saskatoons, what is their economic system? Are they hoarders or sharers? These 10-foot tall trees are the producers in the economy, and using the free raw materials of light, air, and water, they transmute those gifts into leaves and flowers and fruits, as we know. They store some energy in their own bodies, but almost all of the rest is shared. So the abundance of spring rain and sun manifests in the form of flowers, which offer a feast for insects who return the favor by carrying pollen. Food is rarely in short supply for the Saskatoons, but mobility for a tree, that is rare. So movement is a gift of the pollinators. And so they make an exchange. The energy needed to support buzzing around is scarce. So they create a mutual relationship of gift exchange. In summer, when the boughs are laden, serviceberries produce this abundance of sugar. And do they hoard it? Do they keep that energy for themselves? Of course not. They invite the birds to a feast. Come, my relatives, fill your bellies, say the service berries. Are they not storing their meat in the bellies of their brothers and sisters? The jays, the thrashers, the robins. Isn't this an economy too? Each member has an abundance of something which they offer to others. The abundance of berries go to the birds because what use are berries to the tree other than a way to make relationship with birds? Now, eating too many berries has the same effect on birds as it does on people. So fuchsia splats decorate the fence posts. And this, of course, is the whole point of berries, to make themselves so irresistible and plentiful that the birds will come and distribute the seeds far and wide. Passage through a bird gut scarifies the seeds and stimulates germination. So the birds provide services to the service berries, who provide services to them in return. The relationships created by the gift weave myriad relationships. The gift is multiplied with every giving until it returns so rich and sweet that it burbles forth as the bird song that wakes me in the morning. If the abundance had been hoarded, if Juneberries acted solely in their own self-interest, the forest would be diminished. And this makes me think about the person who stole the free farm stand. We had laughed it off as a mistake of little consequence. But a mindset that claims permission to convert a free gift to private property, robbing the community for individual gain, is of the highest consequence. Our petty thief deserves a name. So let's call him Darren. After the CEO of ExxonMobil. We often lay the blame for the outcomes of cutthroat capitalism on the system. There's merit in that, given the complex, layered interactions, but there's no excuse. Let's remember that the system is led by individuals, by a relatively small number of people who have names, more money than God, and certainly less compassion. They sit in boardrooms deciding to exploit fossil fuels for short-term gain while the world burns. They know the science, they know the consequences, but they proceed with ecocidal business as usual. Their behavior feels to me like the same kind of arrogant entitlement as Darren the farm stand thief or Darren the planet wrecker. They're all thieves, stealing our future while we pass around the zucchini. I'm not minimizing the significance of our sweet veggie gift economies. On the contrary, they're emblems of the rich land-based abundance that is possible, stitched together with what used to be called being a good neighbor. And you know what? There are so many more of us than of the Darrens. I lament my own immersion in an economy that grinds what is beautiful and unique into dollars, converts gifts to commodities and a currency that enables us to purchase things we don't really need while destroying what we do. Service berries show us another model, one based on reciprocity rather than accumulation. Without relationships with bees and birds, service berries would disappear from the planet. If they hoarded abundance, even if they hoarded abundance perched atop the wealth ladder, they would not save themselves from the fate of extinction if their partners did not also share in that abundance. Hoarding won't save us either. It won't even save Darren. As I watch the robins and cedar waxwings fill their bellies, I see a gift economy in which abundance is stored in the belly of my brother. It is essential to the well-being of everyone up the food chain. That seems especially important, an important teaching from an immobile, long-lived being like a tree who can't run away from ruptured relationships. Thriving is possible only when you've nurtured strong bonds in your community. We live today in the tension between what is and what is possible. On one hand, we can witness the reciprocity of nature, showing us how things ought to work. And on the other side, we see the outcomes of extractive capitalism, breaking every law, natural law. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling despair in that comparison and powerless to change it, but people are changing it, illuminating alternatives, having the courage to say, let's create something different. Let's create something aligned with our values. We don't have to be complicit with destruction. There are growing examples of little gift economies all around us if we look, from community gardens to buy nothing networks, mutual aid societies, repair cafes, shared community tool sheds, regenerative agriculture, donut economics, ecological economics, so much innovation and that relies on gift economies to create security by sharing abundance. And there's a familiar example that we could all build on when we think about what do we do with abundance. And the abundance in my life tends to be books. The piles on my nightstand threaten to avalanche onto me in the middle of the night. So when I turn the last page, I might give the book to a friend. You do it too, right? That simple act is the atom of a gift economy. I don't sell my book to my friend. I have no expectation of compensation, and that book did not go to the landfill, and my friend and I have something to talk about. It's not so different than what the service berries are doing. And the question is often asked, how do we take gift economies from those individual relationships and scale them up? And I have to say that I'm not sure that's the right question. Why does everything have to be expanded? It's the small scale and the context that makes the flow of gifts meaningful. But for gift economies to have an impact in the world we live in, I'm willing to think about what they might look like on a community scale. And so how does that manifest itself? How does that guide us at a larger scale? And you probably have this too. The village right down the road from where I live is too little to have a public library. But we have, that little wooden post on the corner in that brightly painted box, a little free library where the shelves are full of paperback mysteries and kids' books and how-to manuals, and books just flow in and out without any obligation, right? This free exchange of literature. The box was a gift to the community, which attracted the gift of books, which attracted the gift of readers. And as we know, the little free library movement has spread all over the country. And in fact, the publisher of the Service Berry is making a big donation of books to the little free libraries. Yeah. And isn't that an example of scaling up of a gift economy? But what about public libraries? I think they too embody the notion of common property. Libraries are models of gift economies, providing free access not only to books, but increasingly to music, to tools, to seeds, and more. We don't each have to own everything. Yeah, we could share. We could share. Take the books, enjoy them, bring them back so somebody else can enjoy them. Literary abundance for all. And all you need is a library card. Libraries, parks, trails, cultural landscapes are what we call common resources, right? Meant to be shared and jointly, collectively cared for by the people who use them. They become possible when we pool our excess dollars in the form of taxes for the common good. And We all grumble, I suppose, about paying taxes, but in essence, this legal obligation is an investment in collective care. And other nations, as you know, provide more than books for the common good. Social democracies provide free universal health care, education for all, elder care, family support. And the rate of taxation to support the common good is much higher in these countries than here in the United States, but so is the happiness index. And while we're paying our taxes, those models help us imagine how we might encourage elements of the gift economies within the matrix of capitalism, which sadly is not going anywhere soon. So when I began thinking about all of this economic system, and struggling with my own ignorance, I was grateful for my son-in-law who teaches high school economics. At the beginning of the journey of the service berry, I had to ask him exactly what is an economic system. I said it again. He shared with me the definition that he uses in class. Economics is the study of how we make decisions in the face of scarcity. In order for capitalist markets to function, there must be scarcity. And so we live in a system designed to create scarcity where it doesn't actually exist by converting gifts, abundant gifts, into scarce commodities. But what if scarcity is revealed as just a cultural construct, a fiction that fences us off from a better way of life? When I look at service-berry economics, I don't see scarcity, I see abundance shared. Of course, sometimes there's scarcity when there's not enough rain, and then the scarcity ripples through the web of relationships for sure. But that's real scarcity when the rains don't come. That kind of scarcity produced by natural fluctuation doesn't trouble me at all. But economics based on scarcity rather than cooperation around natural abundance is causing us to now face the consequences of growing shortages of food and clean water, breathable air, fertile soil. Climate change is the product of this extractive economy and is forcing us to confront the inevitable outcome of our consumptive lifestyle, which is genuine scarcity, for which the market has no remedy. The indigenous philosophy of the gift economy, based on our responsibility to pass on those gifts, has no tolerance for creating artificial scarcity through hoarding. In fact, in my culture, in Potawatomi stories, the monster in Potawatomi culture is called Wendigo. And Wendigo suffers from the illness of consuming too much and sharing too little. That is the monster in our culture. The Wendigo is a cannibal whose hunger is never sated, eating its way through the world. Wendigo thinking jeopardizes the survival of the community by incentivizing individual accumulation far beyond the satisfaction of enoughness. And contemporary Wendigos who cannibalize life on this planet for accumulation of money need their own name. Perhaps Darren would fit. Anthropologists who study gift economies note that they function well in small, tightly knit communities. And you might rightly observe that we no longer live in small, insular society, where generosity and mutual esteem structure our relationships. But friends, we could. We could. It is within our power to create such webs of interdependence quite outside the market economy. And maybe that is how we extract ourselves from a cannibal economy. Intentional communities of mutual self-reliance, where the currency is sharing. I don't think market capitalism is going to vanish. The faceless institutions that benefit from it are too entrenched. The thieves are very powerful. But I don't think it's pie in the sky to imagine that we can create incentives to nurture a gift economy that runs right alongside the market economy. Because what we crave is not trickle-down faceless profits, but reciprocal face-to-face relationships, which are naturally abundant, but made scarce by the anonymity of large-scale economies. We have the power to change that, to develop local reciprocal economies that create community. In Sacred Economics, the author Charles Eisenstein reflects on the economy of ecosystems. He says, the next stage of human economy will parallel what we are beginning to understand about nature. It will call forth the gifts of each of us, emphasize cooperation over competition. It will encourage circulation over hoarding. It will be cyclical, not linear. He says money may not disappear anytime soon, but it will serve a diminished role even as it takes on more of the properties of gift. The economy will shrink, but our lives will grow. I see the potential for a mosaic of gift economies emerging. After all, gift economies are more fun, more satisfying, and as nourishing as Juneberry pie. They are as much fun as sneaking zucchini into a parked car. I've long believed that the ones who have more joy win. Maybe those who have more joy win. Maybe this levels the power differential between us and Darren. We have joy and justice on our side. Regenerative economies which reciprocate the gift are the only path forward to replenish the possibility of mutual flourishing for birds, for berries, and for people. We need an economy that shares the gifts of the earth, following the lead of our oldest teachers, the plants. Mi'u, miigwech, mi'u bizintawiak. Thank you so much for listening.
We'll be back for the rest of the event with Robin Wall Kimmerer in a moment. But first, I wanted to tell you about an event coming up with Tommy Orange on May 21st. The MacArthur Genius and Pulitzer Prize finalist has delivered a masterful follow-up to his already classic first novel, There, There, in his latest book, Wandering Stars. In it, Tommy Orange traces the legacies of the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864 and the Carlisle Indian Industrial School through 3 generations of a family in a story that is shattering and wondrous. Tickets are available now for both in-person and online attendance at lectures.org. And now, more from Robin Wall Kimmerer.
I was bragging to Robin backstage about how awesome you Seattle crowd are. I love that. Thank you for that wonderful standing ovation to this incredible woman. It's just truly an honor to be up here with you, Robin. There's many things I think bring honor to you in this moment, but one thing I just want to acknowledge is that I have my 2 kiddos over here in the audience, and to me it means so much for them to see a Native woman, a scientist, an influencer, this incredible badass up here on the stage. Like, that is so amazing. Thank you for who you are and what you do.
Thank you.
I'm a fangirl. My kiddos were raised a little different from me. I was raised in rural Alaska. We come from a hunter-gathering community. I did berry picking, all those things growing up. And then they grew up in Seattle, and they grew up with amazing teachers who taught them about hunting and gathering in this urban space, mostly Carkeek Park. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen it. But they taught me about plant relatives, and they taught me to think about it like they were taught. And I can remember one time going out with my 2 kids, and they were going to harvest some nettle, and they, started doing it, and they said, stop, we need to pour water out for the nettle. And I never had occurred to me, and it really changed the way I think about the way I interact with the natural world. And I want to ask you a question that came up from one of you brilliant people who was anonymous on this question. about your earliest memory of a plant that you have a relationship with.
That takes me back to the old fields behind my house where I grew up in upstate New York. And there are really so many who, the plants really tapped me on the shoulder when I was, this big. But the ones that have really been my teachers from the very beginning are wild strawberries. Food. Food becomes a really good teacher, and the smell of those strawberries ripening in June. I think that strawberries have always been probably the leaders for me in learning about reciprocity, learning about the gifts of plants.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can remember, too, in Alaska, we have wild Alaska strawberries. These little tiny berries, and they're so good and sweet. And that's such a beautiful memory. Thanks for sharing that with us. Our next question comes from Reshma, who 3 days ago had this really good question. It says, I would love to know how you handle eco-grief and eco-anxiety in your own personal life, especially as ecological collapse seems imminent.
Yeah. I'm grateful for this question. I often think about that quote from Aldo Leopold of the consequences of an ecological education are to live alone in a world of wounds. Because because you see, any of us today, you don't need an ecological education, you simply have to have your eyes open, right? To know how wounded the world is. And I'm glad to talk about ecological grief because I think we need to embrace it. I think that we can't just keep this business as usual. Oh yeah, well, the world's on fire. Okay, well, let's take care of business. No, I think we need to do what grief asks us to do, which is to stop us in our tracks and fell us, I think we really have to feel that. We have to mourn because grief is the mirror of our love. And so if we don't allow that grief to penetrate us and to change us and shape us, where will we find the motive force to fight? And I think it's when grief lifts us up in love, and then we say, oh no, this I love too much to lose. And that's what we need. We need to fall in love with the world again. And to me, grief can be the pathway there. Uncomfortable, painful by definition, but the world is on fire. We should feel that pain so that we can then roll up our sleeves and link arms. So feel it. Can I say one more thing about that? One of the ways that we feel it is in collective ceremony, right? That's why we have funerals, right? We need that. And there is a movement started in Europe called the Remembrance Day for Lost Species. Don't you think we should create this as a movement, right? To set a time for grief and action. It's you can, of course, look at the way that some of this has been formulated and think about how to enact that in your own community to activate ecological grief.
Yeah, if we consider, plants, animals, our relatives, why wouldn't we be in deep grief? Why wouldn't we feel it so strong? We have lots of smoke here now in Seattle, unfortunately, in the summers. And I remember one of the first times we had it, I came out of my office and I was just stricken with depression. Like it just hit me in my heart, like so badly. I'd never experienced anything like that in this beautiful city. And I think that that changed me to feel that and to experience it.
Yes.
I love that. Grief is our mirror of love.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that with us, Robin. Speaking of being in this urban area of Seattle that we're living in right now, this person asks, most humans live in urban areas. What are some examples of the gift economy thriving in cities?
I love that question. And as a deeply rural person, I'm often really drawn to what's happening in cities because some of the gift of cities is this this ferment, this exchange of ideas and political action broadly defined. And so I think that cities can really be hotbeds of innovation. I think about the power of cities to create mutual aid societies, gift economies that arose during the pandemic, right? Well, they arose long before that, but became really important at that time. So that's one example for sure. But yeah, of many, including many of the things that I've been hearing that United Way and others are doing in your community, as well as at the real grassroots level.
Yeah. Here in Seattle, we have, this idea and the thought of the Seattle freeze. I don't know about that, Robin, but it's like an idea of people aren't really friendly or kind of nervous or shy. And when I was reading Service Berry, I was thinking, if we could just break through and just to be gift givers to each other in Seattle, just to share, and that would make so many of us nervous, right? We'd be like, oh. Yeah. But what if we were just better at doing that? What if we all just took that risk at some point to just, I'm going to give a gift to somebody. So.
Yeah. Or share things. Somebody was telling me that after they read the Service Berry, they thought, well, what can I do? And they lived in an urban setting as well. And they decided that they were going to have a neighborhood lawnmower. We don't all have to own everything. Yeah. And if you have a neighborhood lawnmower, it means you have to talk to your neighbors. And so things like that, just sharing of resources that create community, which is what I think we all crave.
Yeah, we create that relationship and that spirit of connection. We have several questions that kind of address what's going on in our country right now. And this one that came in says, with the recent presidential election, I know a lot of us are very worried about the future. How are you dealing with this uncertainty, and what do you recommend?
Speaking of Wendigos.
Yeah.
I have, like many, I'm sure, spent time in grief at what was revealed about values, let's say. Yeah. And really laid low by that. And one of my initial responses was to put my hands over my ears. I just didn't want to engage, can't do it. Yeah. But for me, I think that the antidote to that is to continue to do the work that matters. That's the resistance. The resistance is to do the work that matters with attention to the other kinds of resistance that we may need ahead of us, to really be ready to know our neighbors, to know networks, to create the kind of solidarity that will allow collective action if and when that becomes necessary.
Yeah, thank you for that. We had a couple questions that were similar because you are inspiring, Robin, and I think folks are wanting to know what inspires you. And one of the questions we have here is, who are your top teachers and or books you read? Who inspires your heart and spirit right now?
I'm going to answer that question in a way maybe that the asker didn't intend. Yes, authors, scientists, I could give you a long list, but the kinds of things that really motivate me are connection to the living world and my allegiance to those beings. When we ask ourselves, what do you love too much to lose? I have a long list of those favorite beings and places who are in need of my protection. But I will also tell you that I draw daily inspiration from our ancestral teachings. When I think about, what are our the sources, just to remember that our ancestors told us this time would come, and that it is our responsibility, all of our responsibility, to address the challenges that come to us and stand up on behalf of life. We have so many stories that tell about a moment when, what my Haudenosaunee neighbors call, when we will be called upon to give the mighty shout on behalf of all creation. So that those are the things that really keep me going.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I hear someone out there trying to give a little applause for that one. I want to ask there's these two questions, and they're connected. Again, this is Seattle, you're such a brilliant humans. So this question says, what recommendations do you have for advocating for the rights of nature within today's policy landscape, which continues to ignore and remove these rights? And then I want to ask the next question that came up and connect them. What are your thoughts on the blackberry prevalent in the Pacific Northwest? I had to connect the two, I'm sorry.
Rights of blackberries. let me pull those thorns out of my sleeve for just a minute and say that, to me, the rights of nature and the grassroots new systems of jurisprudence that say we are not going to consider the world to be our property and other species to belong to us. So I am really inspired by the way that grassroots activism around rights of nature, declaring the rights of your river, of your mountain, of your lake, right, is within all of our power to do that. And there are great toolkits out there to help with that work. Some of my most favorite rights of nature, I'll just tell you one of them, is when the White Earth Ojibwe, my relatives, declared wild rice to be a legal person. And in this country, legal personhood is for us and for corporations, right? But the Ojibwe said, and wild rice asserts their own sovereignty as a person. And in this country, if you are a legal person, that means you can sue in a court of law. And wild rice has sued the pipeline companies.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
As for blackberries, pick them, enjoy them, make pie. But if the question really is about so-called invasive species, I, as a conservation ecologist, I'm not going to deny the importance of exotic species in species loss of biodiversity, right? It's very real. But I do decry the sort of knee-jerk reaction to say that if it's not native, we need to get rid of it. And I, as somebody who deeply believes that plants are our teachers, I think, well, let's ask them why they're here. How have we changed the world in such a way that they are out competing our native species? And maybe that's what we address, is not, just try to eradicate them, but to change the circumstances which have given them a leg up. So much more to say about that, but I begin with that cautionary note.
I'm thinking about myself and other people out here in the audience, like when you say, like, hey, just take a second to listen. What does that look like for you? Like, how does someone practically do that, to listen to a plant? Give us a step-by-step.
You have to slow down. You have to slow down. You have to take time and use all of your senses and know that plant, that blackberry, that whoever, that skunk cabbage is a teacher. And if you really approach it with that mindset, you look at the way they inhabit the world, you look at the way they point to the light, to their relatives, to who is around them. And then you just start to see these stories unfolding. It all begins with attention, with deep attention, and with the respect that they have something to say to you. If you think they're just a weed, you're not going to learn anything from them. But if you know they're your teacher, you start to learn it. And it doesn't happen overnight. You have to cultivate that relationship, as you do with any teacher.
Yeah. And that can happen if you're native or non-native, right?
Oh, absolutely. oh, yeah. The plants don't ask for identity cards.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And, I think for those of us who live in Seattle, we have so many beautiful teachings from, the Muckleshoot, the Squamish tribes who are actively trying to help us understand the plant relatives that we interact with every day. So I invite you to, look at those resources. Valerie Seagrass from Muckleshoot, the different tribes are putting out all kinds of information to help us understand these plants who have so much to teach us, whose land we're so fortunate to be on. And I think that's been a key thing for me as I began to learn from my plant teachers out there.
Yeah, bravo. Yeah, I think the world of Valerie and Lee Joseph and so many wonderful Indigenous plant knowledge holders who are sharing with us.
Yeah, they want us to grasp it and understand. I think non-native people sometimes ask me, well, can I interact with that? And yes, we need to. It's imperative for the future that we all grasp these teachings and understandings. We're getting close to the end of our time, Robin, which I don't want to stop because it's just been
Good
so
talk to you all day, Colleen.
You were just delightful. I wonder if as we finish up this time together, what is a gift that you've been given or a gift that you like to give that pushes you forward, inspires you, keeps you going? What are some of those gifts that you've given or received?
Oh, I love to think of it in both of those ways. I want to say, gosh, it's such a long list, but probably the most important gift that has ever been given to me, and that I hope that I'm reciprocating, is stories.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah. Stories that remind us who we are, stories that remind us who we can be, and then the privilege and responsibility to not only pass those stories on, but in Potawatomi ways, we say stories are alive, and that we are not only storytellers, we are story makers. And it's that invitation to make a new story.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, we are so grateful to have had you in this space. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for teaching us about what it means to engage with grief and the importance of how it shows us how much we love. I am going to be changed by tonight, and you have brought so much to me and to this beautiful, wonderful Seattle audience. We are grateful for you, Robin. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give her a round.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank all of you. Thank you.
It was an honor to host Robin Wall Kimmerer in 2024 and to welcome her back on the podcast today. If you enjoyed listening, we welcome you to join us in person or online for our 38th season as we hear from authors like Cristina Rivera Garza, Javier Zamora, Emma Straub, and Marlon James. Tickets and subscriptions are available at lectures.org. Thank you to the Seattle Arts and Lectures staff, board, and community, and thanks to all of you for listening. This show would not be possible without you. Our show is produced by Jack Straw Cultural Center with theme music by Daniel Spills. To hear more, subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're there, rate and review us 5 stars so that more people can enjoy Sal on Air.